So today we're going to be talking about how to add and subtract polynomials. Before we do that, we're going to go over a few vocab words to start with. So the first word that we have right here is monomial. So monomial means one term. You can tell by the prefix mono, which means one. So a monomial, we have one term. An example of this would be you could have a number that's by itself. So for example, just 3 by itself, that's one term. You could also have variables by themselves. So for example, 2x. This is also considered one term when it's grouped together like this. And then finally, you could even have other variables like this, 3x cubed, or x to the third power. This is also one term by itself. So monomial means one term. Binomial is going to mean two terms. So bi meaning two. So two terms would look like this. We could have adding together a variable and a number. For example, 2x squared plus 7. There is a term right here and then a term right here. So there's two terms right here. And then you could even subtract them. Right? So these are both examples of binomials when there's two terms. Finally, trinomial is going to be three terms. You can notice it's following a pattern here. So tri meaning three. So trinomial would look like this. You could have our first term is x cubed, and then our second term is negative 10x, and our last term is plus 1. So we have a total of three terms right here. The final vocab word which you saw in our objective is polynomial. So poly means many. So polynomial is a very general term, a general word that we use to refer to as anything with multiple terms. So two or more terms, or you can think about it as multiple terms. So it's a very broad vocab word. So polynomial could include anything that's a binomial. It could include anything that's a trinomial, or even more than three terms. You could have 7 terms. Polynomial is just a really general word to describe anything that has more than one. So here I've written the rule that we need to follow whenever you add or subtract polynomials. So make sure you have this rule written down. When you add or subtract polynomials, only combine the like terms. So this means that they have to have the same letter, so the same variable, like x or y, they have to have the same variable, and they have to have the same exponent. This is very important right here. They must have the same exponent. So when we're looking at problems today, make sure you pay attention to whether or not yours actually has the same exponent. So for example, we might have something like 2x squared plus 5x. So even though both of these have the same variable, they both have the letter x, you cannot add these together. The reason why we can't add them together is because of the exponent. We have a 2 here, and then this one doesn't have an exponent. If they don't have matching exponents, do not add or do not subtract them together. They must have the same exact exponent in order for you to do anything. So keep this rule in mind when you are doing the problems today. Okay, so let's start with example number 1. Okay, so with example 1, we want to find the sum. We have 2x squared plus 5x minus 7 plus 3 minus 4x squared plus 6x. So I'm going to identify all of the like terms, and we're going to add those together. So the first thing that I see is we have a 2x squared, and then we have a minus 4x squared. Same exponent and same variable. So I can add these together. So 2 plus negative 4 is negative 2x squared. Whenever you add or subtract, you only change the number in front. Nothing about the variable or exponent changes. Next, I see that we have this 5x and 6x. So I can add those together. Same variable, same exponent. So that combined is plus 11x. And then finally, I can add my numbers together. So negative 7 plus 3, I can add those together. So that will be minus 4 at the end of it. So once I've added together everything that's a like term, notice I can't keep on adding here because these are not like terms. I can't add together these. They don't have the same exponents. I can't add together these because one's a variable, one's a number. So this would be our final answer. Once you find out you can't keep adding anything else, you will leave this as your final answer. Okay, so here's a practice problem for you to try. Pause the video right now and try to add together the like terms on your own. Then you can come back and rewatch the video for the answer. Okay, so hopefully you paused and you tried to solve it on your own. Let's go over the answer. So the first thing that I'm going to start with, I'm just going to start with the largest exponent. So the largest one is the exponent of 3. So I see a y to the third power. I also see 2y to the third power. So adding those together is going to be 3y to the third power. Next, I'm going to look for y squared. Do I see any y squared? So I don't actually see any like terms for this one. So this 4y squared is just going to stay by itself. There's nothing I can add it to. So that's just going to be left alone. Next, I'm going to look at the regular y variable. So I have one right here, and I also have one right here. So 3y plus negative 4y. Remember, always look at the sign in front right here. So 3 plus negative 4 is what we want to be solving for. And then this gives me negative 1y. So I'm going to write it as negative y. And then our last thing is the numbers, so we can add together our numbers. We got negative 5 and we have 8, so adding those together we have plus 3. And this would be our final answer here. If you added together everything correctly, we cannot add anything else beyond this point because all of these terms are different. So this would be our final answer for the practice. If this is what you got, good job. Okay, so now let's look at a subtraction example and figure out how do we subtract polynomials. Okay, here's our subtraction problem for example 2. So we want to find the difference, and here when subtracting, make sure that you do something a little bit different than when we did for adding. Because the way subtraction works, you need to make sure that you subtract every single one of these terms individually. And so whenever you're subtracting, you always want to think about distributing the negative first. So distribute the negative sign. So what that means is you want to take this minus sign and multiply this by every single term after it. So we're going to distribute it to each of these 3 terms, and I'm going to rewrite the problem. So I have the first part is the same, but after this I'm going to rewrite it so I have minus 4x. This negative times a negative is now going to become a positive 5, and negative times a positive is going to be a negative 3x squared. You have to do this, otherwise you'll get a different answer when you're doing the subtraction problems. Okay, so now we're just going to combine like terms. So we have our x squareds. I'm going to add those together. I have negative x squared. Next, I have the regular x terms, so negative 2x and negative 4x. Combine those together is negative 6x. And then 3 and 5, combine those together, we get positive 8. So our final answer is going to be x squared minus 6x plus 8. Remember, do this step first, distribute the negative, before you combine like terms. Here is a practice problem for you to try now on your own. Make sure to pause the video, try to solve and combine like terms, and then come back and watch the answer. Okay, so I hope you paused and you tried this on your own first. Remember, distribute the negative. So I'm going to rewrite the problem. So this will be minus 3p squared minus 2 and then these two negative signs will now become a plus 9p. Now I can combine the like terms. So I'm going to start with the biggest exponent, so 4p cubed. There's no other variables with the same exponent, so this will stay the same. I can't combine it with anything else. Next, let's look at the squared. I do not see any other squared terms either, so I'm going to keep this one the same as well, minus 3p squared. And then now let's look at the regular p variable. So I see a 7 and I also see a 9p. So I can add those together. This will give me positive 16p. And then finally my numbers. So negative 8 and negative 2, combine those together, you should get negative 10. So we have minus 10. Now double check that you don't have any like terms. Our answer should be this. So to finish off, we're just going to look at one more problem. In Delta Math, you might see this kind of problem show up. So if you have any questions about it, hopefully this will clarify. So let's say you get a problem that looks like this. Subtract 9x squared minus 7x from negative 4x squared plus 6. When you are doing this problem, and they say subtract this from this, that means you need to write out the equations yourself. So if we're subtracting this from, that means that the negative 4x squared will be in front. And then we need to subtract this. So minus 9x squared minus 7x. Make sure you use parentheses like the examples that we did before so that you can calculate correctly. After you use parentheses, you would just solve this like we normally do. So again, distribute this negative before you solve. So I'm going to rewrite it now, distributing the negative, so minus 9x squared. This would be a plus 7x now. And then combine like terms. So I can combine these two. They are like terms, so I would get negative 13x squared. And I can combine, and then these ones we can't combine. So we got a number, we got a variable. So these would just stay the same as they were. So 7x and 6 will not be combined with anything else because there's no like terms. So this would be our final answer for the Delta Math problem. So again, if it says subtract from, you can rewrite it like this. This part would go in front, and then you would take away this. If you have any questions on how to do anything, remember, go back and re-watch the video to review how to add and subtract the different polynomials.